Welcome once again to the Gaming Codex, the show where I try to explain to you all the many terms used to describe video games and the video games industry in general, and today's term is early access. According to the general definition, early access or early funding or alpha access or paid alpha is a funding model in the computer game industry by which consumers can pay for a game in the various development cycles, whether they are pre-alpha, alpha or beta, and obtain access to the pre-full release version of the game, while the developer is able to use those funds to continue work on the game. And of course, along the way, it's sort of implied that the game is in some way shaped by the feedback from the people that bought the game. It's a sort of symbiotic method of developing a video game, one by which not only do you get money to actually make it and, are able to make it, but because you involve people early on, people with a vested interest in the game being good, you have a willing test base to make sure that the game works properly and will do their best to make sure nothing is outright broken. Despite what you may believe, early access is not something that Steam started. Early access has been a thing for quite a while. One of the most popular video games ever made, Minecraft, is an example of a game that began in a sort of early access type of development cycle, where the creator was selling the alpha version of the game in order to fund the development of it, and it became a runaway success. It was finished, it was launched, it has gotten a lot of content after launch, and it's become a cultural phenomenon. Well, as other games have been in early access for longer than Minecraft and still have not been actually released. For example, Project Zomboid. Though to be fair, Indie Stone does have a few reasons for which the game is not yet ready, such as Google and PayPal deciding to not give them the money they got from their customers through their payment methods, as well as the laptops that they were using to develop the game being stolen. But it's still being developed and will be released one day soon. It's even on Steam's early access, which is what we generally think about when we hear the words early access, because up until Steam made that category, early access wasn't really a well-defined term in itself. We had, as said in the definition, early funding, alpha access, paid alphas, but because of Steam we now call all of these early access. And it's not something you see just from indies. A lot of companies are jumping onto the early access bandwagon. And it's not just PCs anymore, it's on consoles too. Even big publishers have got into the spirit of it, like Electronic Arts, that never actually finishes a game. That's a joke. Sort of. Early access in its basic form is an absolutely great idea that will let people develop games for which they would not have had the funds for. They don't have to go crawling to a publisher and sign away all rights to their life's work. They don't have to take bank loans that will murder them. They just go to the people that would want to buy such a game and sell them the game. And then they add to it and add to it and add to it until the game is ready. It's different from crowdfunding because you basically sort of kind of have a playable version of it, not just some pipe dream about how you're gonna make an MMORPG with real-time combat that's akin to Street Fighter and real-world destruction simulation, and it's also gonna be a racing game and a flight game and a dating game with pigeons. Now, what is the popular definition of early access? Well, that would be a perfect representation of what the final game will be with no changes, ever. Well, maybe some extra content. One important thing for people, for users, for gamers, for players to understand before they get into the early access thing is that some games, most games, are launched into early access before they are ready. So what you're playing, that's not the final game. That's many steps removed from being the final game. It will change, it will evolve, it will be rebalanced, it will even look differently play than it does right now. So it's sort of expected for the original version that's launched on early access to sort of be not good because it's not ready. It's there for testing first and foremost. It's there because people need to try it to see if it runs on their systems, if it doesn't blow up, if the mechanics are at least in some way enjoyable under all the crashing and bugs. And on top of that, you will see added more content, more gameplay, expanded mechanics, polish, and all sorts of other things. That's the general idea that you have to be aware of, that for a long time, even 2-3 years maybe, you'll see games stuck in early access for, well, again, there's some of them that have been in early access for 7 years, but you will see games out in early access for years, and it will take some time until they reach the final version. So you shouldn't always judge them by the first appearance. But there are some exceptions. So what would be the marketing definition of early access? Well, that is the final game. There are some developers that just chunk something on early access and then never do anything with it. They'll even take it out of early access and still it'll be the same game with little no improvement, with pretty much nothing actually done to sort of signify that this is actually the final version, without keeping up with any of the promises made in regards to the development of the game. You even have situations that are kind of crazy, and I mean crazy, where a developer will recoup the cost of making the game up until now, enough to pay back the investors. Again, this is before the game has launched, and then cease development, citing that it hasn't been selling well enough for the development to go on, even though they haven't implemented all the features that were promised, and even though the game is still in early access and therefore is not a final version. So it's kind of making sense it wouldn't sell amazingly well as opposed to when it would have been finished. Also, it kind of still needs some development to it because there's still bugs in it and missing features. And yes, I am still a bit miffed because Space DF9 sort of shafted everybody that supported it, and Double Fine still hasn't earned back that trust, even though people saw it in their hearts to fund Psychonauts 2. But it's still a reality that some companies, some individuals, some entities from the black pits of hell will abuse the system. Wherever there is money to be made with little work, there will always be abuse, and that abuse will taint the perception of early access for everyone. It will negatively affect those people who actually do their best, and I mean actually try and make the game as best they can, selling very few copies but still trying their best to not disappoint the people that put their trust in them. But again, those people aren't from Los Angeles or game industry veterans, or basically bots that just generate fake games and put them on Steam. So ends another chapter of the Gaming Codex. Come back next time and we will talk about a brand new subject. Goodbye.